Intel says so long to one leader. Amazon says hello to an AI supercomputer. And Panasonic uses AI to revive their leader. We'll chat about these stories and more on this Tech News Roundup episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. The guy behind the monitors is Chris. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome back.
Thanks.
And joining me as guest co-host once again is Lindsay O'Donnell. She is a cybersecurity journalist who has worked for several security news sites, including Decipher and ThreatPost. Welcome back to the show, Lindsay.
Thanks, Keith.
All right.
Happy to be here.
You had so much fun that you said, well, let's do it again, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So, the big news of the week, at least in the tech space, was Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger had retired. The initial early story was the retirement, but I think as the week went on, we sort of learned more about what is most likely happening. But he basically retired this past Sunday after more than 40 years in the industry. The company quickly named two interim co-CEOs to hold the fort while it searches for a long-term replacement. The two co-CEOs are David Zinsser, who currently serves as CFO, and Michelle Johnston Holthaus, who, in addition to her existing responsibility for the company's client computing group, now takes on the data center and AI group and the network and edge group in the newly created role of CEO of Intel Products. I didn't realize this, that he had returned to the company. So he's only been back for 3 years? I totally forgot that there was someone in between, but that's also because I think at that time I was also covering robotics and automation, and I wasn't covering general tech like we do now. So, so I guess, and then there's a lot of stories about that the board was very unhappy with the turnaround and that they didn't really, make a push. You've got NVIDIA, you've got AMD in the chip space, and Intel. It just feels like they're just this big, heavy, old company. I think you cover chips and semiconductors a lot more than I do, Lindsay. So what were your takeaways? Was this a surprise to you?
Yeah, it's funny. This story gave me the opportunity to go back to my chip coverage past. And I used to cover Intel in the 2010s, back when Brian Krzanich was the CEO. And we've seen a lot of Intel's kind of losses the past year or two, and even reports of the takeover target earlier this year, I think it was.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to also highlight kind of the past and how they got to this place. And, when I was reporting on Intel, they missed out on kind of the big mobile boom, largely losing share to ARM and to Qualcomm. Yeah. And then, they really started lagging in the mid 2010s, kind of in the nanometer design production process. So that's kind of where we were at when Gelsinger came in 2021, I think it was. Uh-huh. He was coming into a company that was already beset by a lot of challenges. And then, as you mentioned, we had the AI boom, which NVIDIA has been kind of at the forefront of. And of course, Intel kind of missed the boat on that one as well. So, Gelsinger had a huge task, which is that Intel's trying to make a comeback essentially from the past decade, in addition to these new challenges they have. And, I think, unfortunately, the strategy that they had is just taking a little bit longer than the board seems to have wanted, and it's costlier than they wanted. So I don't know if I would say I was surprised by this, but it's just kind of a matter of where they want their strategy to go. Yeah,
well, especially with the takeover stories that bubbled up, was it earlier in the fall or even before then, that were shot down? There were a lot of people that were like, "There's no way that they were going to get sold to another company." Was it AMD or was it someone else that wanted to buy them? Do you remember?
I think it was AMD, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. Yeah. It could have been ARM too. Anyway, I forget those, but that was shot down pretty quickly. I'm wondering if maybe that's the direction the board wants to go, or do you think that this company could have a turnaround and get back to where it was, or at least with competing with NVIDIA? Because it doesn't seem like anybody's competing with NVIDIA at this point.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, Chris.
I don't think they should compete with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is on a whole other solar system right now. I think Intel should just go back to CPUs, make the best, highest quality, fastest CPUs, and that's it. Stay in your lane. But compete with was it AMD? Yeah, AMD,
Yeah.
and because I'm looking at it.
But even Apple is making its own chips for its computers now, so they're not even involved in that. That's that technical space. I mean, it's almost like you're limiting yourself to those Windows computers. And
maybe that's fine. Maybe that's where their market is. Maybe they try to own that market, just the desktop market. I mean, Apple can do that because, they're Apple.
right.
They make their own OS, they make their own hardware. Now they make their own CPUs, obviously. GPU. Well, I don't know. Do they make their own GPUs? I don't know.
Every time they have an Apple announcement, it's always about the M3, M4, M5, whatever new chip they're gonna put out.
You look at it here, and it does. I totally forgot about this, but Intel, I think they did try to make their own GPU. They have the Intel Arc B series GPU, and it's like, geez, did anybody buy that? Like, on a consumer level, like if you're a consumer, you're a gamer, right? Or even in the creative space, you're not going to look at Intel you're going to either look at AMD or NVIDIA.
Well, for the GPUs, but I know that when I bought the last time I bought a gaming PC was probably a year ago, or it was in the laptop a year and a half ago. I still was looking at when I was looking at the tech specs, a lot of these were still Intel i7s, Intel i5s, all that kind of stuff.
That's the CPU.
Yeah, I know, the CPU space.
Yeah,
but they don't even give you an option for an Intel GPU. I mean, it was always NVIDIA or AMD, I think, were those options.
It's just so odd.
Yeah.
Like, why would you try? Don't try. Don't. You're going up against Titans right now. NVIDIA, it's just going to be embarrassing. Like, come on. But
so I mean, does that lead to a bigger question of can companies that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years, can they even come back if they're having a downslide, or should they just sell off the company and basically, sell off its parts?
If I'm going to buy, personally, if I'm going to buy a CPU today, it's still going to be Intel.
Right.
That's what they're known for.
Okay.
Really, really great CPUs. I might fancy a AMD one, but I'm probably just going to stick with Intel. I've always had Intel, but
okay. But you skipped the question then. I guess.
Wait, what was it?
Well, do you think that a company like Intel that it has experienced a downturn, that's been around for 40 plus years, can they make a comeback? I mean, the only other example I've seen of a company making a big comeback was Apple in the tech space, because they were down for a while after, when then they brought back Steve Jobs and then boom, they took off because they landed that phone stuff. Right?
I think so. I think they can come back easily.
Okay.
I mean, the other thing to think about too is like if you're in the semiconductor, CPU market, whatever, you're making wafers and stuff, like you got to have that infrastructure.
Yeah.
They have that infrastructure. They have it. Just rejigger your marketing, rejigger your focus, just, turn your magnifying glass and just get back on track. I think they can turn it around.
Lindsay, you know more about this space than I do. So what do you think?
No, I agree. I think they were on to the right track then when they were looking at essentially what they did earlier this year was they split split their foundry business, which is kind of the manufacturing, and then their products business. And basically each arm had its own operations and things like that. And I think that was a good approach to take because essentially with the foundry business now they can kind of contract out to other companies. And essentially if you look at all the semiconductor ecosystem, there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of partnerships, a lot of customers who are also competitors, so competitive customers.
Yeah.
So I think that is the right approach to take. But like the report had mentioned, and as some analysts in the space have pointed out, this is the foundry business is an extremely expensive thing to roll out, and I think it's going to take a little while. And I think that they're just being pressured by the board and by investors. So I think timing is all key here if they can pull it off. The other interesting thing that I hadn't realized, but I guess Intel Products is Foundry's number one customer right now. So I don't really know how that works, but it's,
you kind of have to have other product companies that are out there that are bigger customers, right? In theory.
I mean, I'd imagine, but yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, so we'll stay tuned. We'll see what happens when they do announce a new CEO and see which direction they want to go. I know that there are a lot of people that have a soft spot for Intel, and so I think that they're rooting for them as well. But it would be interesting to see if they just did get sold off and then everybody went in a new direction. But it does seem like Chris, you might be right in the CPU space that like maybe that's where they just focus all that energy and not compete with it, NVIDIA. But AI is, that's where all the money's going too.
Yeah, AI, GPUs and
yeah. All right, hey, so there's another related story with the AI chips in the space. So Amazon had its Invent conference this week, and one of the stories that jumped out at me was this one. So their cloud computing arm, AWS, has announced plans for an Ultra cluster, which is a massive AI supercomputer made up of hundreds of thousands of its homegrown Trainium chips, as well as a new server. The latest efforts by its AI chip design lab, which is based in Austin, Texas. The chip cluster will be used by the AI startup Anthropic, which the Amazon also invests in. They've put $4 billion into Anthropic. The cluster is now called Project Rainier, will be located in the U.S. When ready in 2025, it will be one of the largest in the world for training AI models, according to Dave Brown, Amazon Web Services Vice President of Compute and Networking Services. AWS also announced a new server called Ultra Server, made up of 64 of its own interconnected chips, and they announced this at Invent. So combined, the announcements underscore AWS's commitment to Trainium, the in-house designed silicon the company is positioning as a viable alternative to the GPUs sold by chip giant NVIDIA. So it looks like Amazon is going that Apple route, where they're going to be basically creating their own chips for their own systems. The other thing that jumped out at me was this supercomputer idea for training AI models, and everyone keeps going in the AI space. They keep going like, we got to get scale, we got to get scale, we got to get scale, as if scale will somehow create the super intelligent AGI. And I still have my doubts there. Lindsay, what kind of thoughts did you have around that news from Amazon?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing that stuck out to me is that they've got the backing with Anthropic here. They've got Apple being a customer. I think that's pretty significant. I'm curious to see how this might shake up the market a little bit. I mean, like we mentioned before, NVIDIA is significantly a leader in this space. And I think I read somewhere they had like 70% market share or something. So
wow, that's huge.
I mean, that's going to be, So that's a pretty tough nut to crack, but I'd be curious kind of how this changes up things. And to your point about, the supercomputer as well, just like continuing to evolve these types of applications and where that goes.
Yeah. And I think with NVIDIA too, isn't Elon Musk one of the huge customers of NVIDIA chips? And that's where a lot of these new chips are going, are to develop all of the Elon Musk AI stuff that he wants to do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too. Right. And all the Tesla car autopilot, I'm sure they all use NVIDIA GPUs. All their cars, probably.
Exactly. So, so it should be interesting to see, what directions that take. It does feel like there are companies that are now responding to the high growth that NVIDIA had in this space. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, I want to switch to the next topic, which is cybersecurity space. So Lindsay, I think you've got some really cool thoughts here. The U.S. arm of spirits maker Stoli Group filed for bankruptcy late last week, citing an August cyber attack as a contributing factor. The company, which is headquartered in Luxembourg, produces the eponymous vodka brand formerly known as, oh God, why did I even read this? Stalachnaya? How bad was that pronunciation? Was that pretty bad? Oh, anyway.
Worse.
Yeah, and they also produce the Kentucky Owl whiskey brand. The ransomware attack in August disabled the company's primary system for tracking resources and operations and forced essential functions such as accounting into manual entry mode. The cyber attack caused, quote, severe operational disruption, and Stoli had issues with compliance with Fifth Third Bank's reporting requirements. Cyber attack costs have figured into other recent bankruptcy filings by other companies, including Peterson Healthcare, which was due in part to the cyber attack against United Health Group's Change Healthcare unit, and Jericho Pictures, the parent company of data broker National Public Data, filed for Chapter 11 protection, citing regulatory investigations and the cost of notifying victims and providing credit monitoring after a 2023 hack. So what's interesting is that we have a number of companies now that are blaming a lot of these ransomware attacks and cybersecurity issues as a reason for their bankruptcy. It feels to me like this is just another reason why cybersecurity needs to be a lot more on top of mind for a lot of companies, because now you could go out of business because of these things, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And, we've seen this before where ransomware has been a factor in companies filing for bankruptcy or even company closures. Like I remember, I think it was last year, a hospital in Illinois actually had to close down because they were hit by ransomware. And in that circumstance, similar to the circumstances here, it wasn't like the primary factor. It was they were already dealing with staffing shortages due to the pandemic and inflation and supply chain stuff.
Oh, so that was kind of like the final nail then?
It was, sorry?
Well, that was like the final nail in the coffin of the company.
It was, yeah. Okay. And exactly. Yeah. So, and I think it's similar here where there were a lot of external factors, and this is kind of the tipping point, really. Like one ransomware attack happens, and then they're just like, okay, this is kind of been like you said, the nail in the coffin. The attack in August, it seemed like, it disrupted their enterprise resource planning platform. So these sorts of things can lead to all sorts of costly processes, like delays in the supply chain or like incident response costs, recovering data, like potential loss of customers even. So, right. I think there are different financial hits that, kind of pile on to the existing factors. And it seemed like Stoli had certainly had its fair share of kind of weird external factors reading through the filing.
Well, yeah. What's interesting is that up until this point, you would hear of ransomware attacks, and companies were paying the ransom because they were, they were sort of forced into a corner. They wanted to get their operations back up if it was the right system that got attacked. We saw the MGM Resorts attack in Las Vegas, and one company did pay and another company didn't. The company that didn't pay had all of these delays, and there were customers that were getting ticked off, and there was a significant drop in the company's value from a lot of these things. But I had yet to see a lot of companies that would basically file bankruptcy out of it. But it does seem like you were saying, it was just a part of another. They had a lot of other problems. But if you are at a company and you are having a lot of problems, the last thing you want is a ransomware attack, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And I think it just piles on to all these other issues. And I mean, you mentioned the costs, like these are not, these are expensive events that can happen. I think I read it was IBM's cost of a data breach report said it was like an average cost of $4.91 million. But then we see these massive attacks costing, like the one for Change Healthcare earlier this year. I think they said that it was over $800 million in losses that they were hit because of that. So it really ranges across the board. And if Stoli's massive, but if you're a smaller SMB or something, it's going to, it's just they're not going to be able to take on those types of costs.
Yeah. I didn't get to ask you this yet, Lindsay, but what are your thoughts on whether companies should pay ransomware? Because we've had some other guests on the show, and they agree with the FBI. The FBI always says don't pay the ransom. Don't basically deal with it as much as you can, but don't actually pay the ransom because that encourages more attacks. But on the other hand, you also have companies saying we have to get back up and running, and we're going to lose more money if we don't pay the ransom. So I just wanted to hear what your thoughts are on that big choice.
It's, I think that the general consensus that I've seen, and it sounds like this is what other guests have said, is that it's frowned upon to pay the ransom. But but circumstances vary, right? Like if you're a hospital that has been hit by ransomware and, patient, machines that are, looking at kind of critical infrastructure and patient safety are compromised or, being delayed or have downtime, that's a very different factor than if you're, a company that, has more of a straightforward ransomware attack, or if you're a company dealing with critical infrastructure. It's just going to put you on a different level. So yes, I think the consensus is don't pay the ransom, but also it's hard to tell. I think every company has their own unique choices. One thing I will say too is the rise of cyber insurance has been really interesting to see, but what what that means for kind of ransom payments. But
Yeah.
what's interesting now is a lot of cyber insurance companies are starting to say, hey, if you want us to take you on, like if you want to use cyber insurance, you need to implement kind of the basic cybersecurity measures first.
Right. And a lot of those insurance companies will likely audit those companies to make sure that they're following that rules, or then deny a claim. If a ransomware is paid, the insurance company will be like, yeah, but you didn't have the A, B, and C done, so we don't have to pay it. And there's probably some policies around that as well that are being written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a tough question, though. I mean, this is something that people have been talking about and going back and forth for years. And I think the big caveat is that if you pay the ransom, there's no guarantee. I mean, these people are cyber criminals at the end of the day, and there's no guarantee that they're not going to still, leak your data or keep your data for themselves or whatnot. So that's also kind of a big thing to keep in mind as well.
Right. I think, Chris, you brought that up at one point where there's no guarantee. Yeah, there's no guarantee that if you pay the ransom that they're not going to do something with that data if they've captured it, right?
Right. Well, I think it's more about the access to the data. So they kind of lock their data, I think. As someone said it was a guest we had on.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's like what they say, don't negotiate with terrorists.
Same.
Because they're terrorists.
Right. Right.
They're not going to follow you.
Well, a lot of them are starting to follow business rules too. I mean, we've seen a lot of these organizations that are acting like businesses, but they're just criminal too.
Well, yeah, it's a organized criminal venture.
They have customer service reps and things like that. They're probably using AI chatbots now too.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably using Google, Gmail. They're using
All right. I want to move on to our next category, which is the whole holiday shopping season. We just got through the whole week of Black Friday. Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday. You know what I was really annoyed by this year, Lindsay, was all of the Giving Tuesday stuff. And maybe it's just me. I'm just getting cranky and older in my life. But there were so many posts I was seeing online, whether it was Facebook or LinkedIn. Everyone was just hitting me over the head with Giving Tuesday stuff. And, I do donate to different charitable organizations and other things. I just don't like being forced to do it on a single day. I don't know if that bugs you as well, or if it's just me. I'll get to that in a second, but Cyber Monday online sales did hit a new record of $13.3 billion, outperforming expectations, remaining the biggest online shopping day of all time. According to Adobe Analytics data, U.S. consumers spent $13.3 billion online during Cyber Monday, up 7.3% year over year, and surpassing the initial projection of $13.2 billion. In the peak hours of 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, the analysis indicates that consumers spent $15.8 million online every minute. Like, that's just amazing. And we used to call it e-commerce, and now basically it's just called commerce, right? Like, that's just the way it is. It's like most people are buying this stuff online. But we also saw Black Friday stuff and that whole thing. I wanted to ask you, Lindsay, so how much, do you participate in all of these things? Do you go online and shop on a specific day? Do you go back to the stores on a Black Friday anymore? Because it also feels like companies have just gone, the entire month of November, we're going to have sales. So Black Friday doesn't matter as much as it used to. It's interesting that Cyber Monday still has this big cachet around it. Like, you can only, but I've seen Cyber Monday ads that be like, okay, Monday or Tuesday. So it doesn't, the more you extend something, the less unique it becomes, and that's what was bugging me as well. I just wanted to hear some other opinions.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that with Cyber Monday. I mean, what company was it? I think it was like Minted or something. Was like Cyber Monday deal, and then the deal was still going on yesterday. So I was like,
right.
Okay,
yeah.
This is so it's a Cyber Week deal, but. I was really surprised to see that there were record numbers, and maybe this says something more about like the economy or something, but like, given that Black Friday also exists and people could go in the stores now, that surpassed even COVID in 2020 when everyone was home. Like, who knows, maybe it says something more that like during that time frame, people were kind of tightening their belts or whatever, versus now. But that was kind of surprising to me to see that for this year being the record.
Well, yeah, and Cyber Monday used to, the whole reason it became Cyber Monday was because there was this feeling that, On Black Friday, or so on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, even on Thanksgiving, that you would be at home and you didn't have the fast connections that you needed for a lot of this e-commerce stuff. So everyone would go back to work on Monday and use the high-speed connection to go do their online shopping. But to be honest, I think everybody now has a high-speed connection in their home. This was probably 10, 15 years ago when people might still be using dial-up internet access and, maybe DSL, and you would have a T1 at work. So and plus people don't really want to work anymore. That could be the other thing too. But you would actually save some of your shopping for the Cyber Monday stuff. And now it just feels like you could just do this anytime in the month of November. So I'm very surprised that those numbers hit on Cyber Monday.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I'm curious for both of you guys, do you go into the stores on Black Friday anymore? Because I don't think I know anyone who does that really anymore. I know my husband used to, but not so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd have those long lines outside the stores. The TV news crews would be there, and then I think now it's just like if someone's opening at the early on Black Friday, you get 3 people that might walk in. I guess it depends on if you need a TV at that point, to wait.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, I remember back in the day when Blu-ray was a thing. And after a movie came out, you'd go to the midnight release of a Blu-ray release of a movie.
Or they would have Black Friday deals where you could pick up a whole bunch of movies for $5. That was always a cool idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember the last time I actually went on a Black Friday in the morning to line up anywhere. I don't even think I ever did that, even when that was popular. But I'm not really the shopper in the house. I defer to my wife for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm just trying to afford childcare and groceries. It's crazy.
Yeah, it might be the wrong season to ask us this, Lindsay.
Yeah, I think grocery stores should have Black Friday.
Oh, where you could get you could get a deal on steak during certain hours.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
That might not be a bad idea. Yeah, I didn't hit the mall at all over the weekend, and I've already told my kids are all teenagers, and they don't see it like the same kind of things that I do. Like, they want to go up into the mall, but I was like, you don't have to drive through the traffic to get there. And so I've told them, if you want anything at Target or wherever they go shopping up at our local mall, you have to do this during the week because the traffic is not as bad. And there are long traffic jams around this mall that we live near. So, yeah.
It's stressful.
Yeah. And then you had everybody else that was going to the movies this past weekend too, because they all wanted to go see Wicked. So I avoided the movie theater as well. All right. So, happy shopping. And if you are a Cyber Monday fan, good for you. All right. Next topic. All right. This one I do just for Chris, because Chris loves talking about workplace stuff. So there's a new Gallup poll basically saying that employees across America are feeling increasingly detached from their jobs. They are seeking new job opportunities at the highest rate since 2015, while overall satisfaction with their employer has returned to a record low. Yet, unlike the Great Resignation, which is what the big mass resignations that happened during COVID, many frustrated employees are now struggling to make the leap to a new employer in a cooling job market and an economy marred by inflation. Instead, they are left feeling stuck with their discontent. Gallup is referring to this shift as the Great Detachment. For employers, this means that while turnover numbers may have slowed, employee productivity concerns and future talent loss are hidden organizational risks. In addition, when employees feel detached from their work, organizational change initiatives are likely to meet indifference or resistance. While the issues fueling the Great Detachment are not entirely new, the historic workplace changes that initiated this new era are unique and require a new leadership approach. And then Gallup had a bunch of different other statistics around this. But as I was reading this story, I actually thought of another insight that I wanted to share with both you and Chris. So we've talked a lot on this show about how difficult it is to try to find a new job. Where companies are putting up fake job listings. They've added a lot of AI technologies to help screen through resumes, et cetera, et cetera. So my insight and thought is, what if companies are doing this on purpose as a way to keep their employees there and from making that jump to a new job?
No.
No?
I don't think
Interesting.
Too much of a conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat type of a thing. Think about it.
I think companies are too afraid right now to make any decisive decision with the whole work from home thing and stuff, because they're afraid people might leave. But at the same time, it's like, are you guys certain they're going to do that? Like, just make a decision.
Like, do you think most companies want to keep their employees, or
I mean, I would imagine your employer wants to keep employees. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine why you wouldn't want to do that.
Why? Well, there is that whole ghost jobs issue. I still don't understand why companies do that willingly.
Well, they do that to make it look good, right? To make it look like they're growing and
right.
They have these open jobs here that are fake that nobody else knows about. Yeah, I mean, they're trying to, game the system, make it look like they're performing good, and they can tell their other their employees like, hey, we're doing so good. Look at that. We have these jobs open right here. Wow, we're growing. I mean, it's probably a very cynical way to think about it, but I mean, I think that is actually the case. Like those ghost jobs, like I think that's what it is they're just trying to give the image like they're doing good, and what I mean?
Like if you were so Lindsay, Lindsay first, am I crazy or not crazy? And it's okay to call me crazy.
No, I hadn't thought of that, but it very well might be. I mean, I'm curious to see kind of what like. First of all, LinkedIn is an anomaly to me, and I see so many different posts there about people who are kind of exposing different information about kind of their job hunt and things like that. So I'd be curious, like, if what kind of, if companies are kind of involved in that or what. But I mean, you could be right.
All right.
I don't know.
So there are two categories of people that in the job hunting space. There are people that do not have a job. And that they are looking for a job. And so if you're in that bucket, then yes, you're going to be frustrated by a lot of these obstacles, such as the AI, such as, dealing with ghost listings and, not getting a human response, quickly enough, or going through rounds and rounds of interviews and then not getting picked. I mean, I've been there, dozens of times through my career of trying to get a job. And I feel bad for all of those people. But then, so I think that this conspiracy theory I have is more for the second bucket, which are people that are currently have a job and that they might, be looking for a new one. They always say that the best time to look for a new job is when you have one, because because then you don't have to worry about, a lot of the frustrations and then not having to, get a, because again, when you don't have a job, you want to get a job as quickly as possible. So I'm thinking that maybe this second bucket of people that might, the frustrations about getting a job might prevent them from going out and looking. So maybe a company would be like, we want to, hey, here's a retention, instead of actually, listening to the employees and paying them what they're worth and all those other benefits that they give. Why don't we just make it really hard for people to want to quit and go find a new job with the people we have? But it sounds crazy to me now that I'm actually, trying to say what I'm thinking. But there is this detachment that I think companies need to address, or at least be aware of as well. Because that can't be good for an organization if most of your employees, I mean, there's that whole quiet quitting thing and, all of that stuff.
I think the remote and versus hybrid versus going fully into office thing is really interesting, because we're fully in that right now, that transition. And we've seen it with a bunch of different companies. Some are, asking people to go in full time now. Some are staying hybrid, and, some are remote. But I think that plays a little bit of a role here, because it's hard for, the way that I'm reading this report, it seems like the detachment is like a detachment with your company and your loyalty to the company. And it's hard to do that when you are remote. So I'm really curious how things will move forward. Like if companies are kind of pinpointing that and asking people to go in more, or how companies are going to handle the remote work. And I say that as someone who's worked remotely even before the pandemic
Right.
hit. I think some people are really good at working remotely, others struggle with it. So yeah, I think that the whole thing and what happened during COVID is we're still reeling from that a little bit.
I would love to do an episode where I don't talk about the pandemic and all of the things that it disrupted. But I think we're still going to be talking about this for another year or so at least, until we figure it out. I don't know. I don't know where that's going. All right, last topic. And this is interesting too. This is an AI related thing, but Japanese electronic company Panasonic has created an AI version of its founder, Konosuke Matsushita, who died in 1989. This is according to the Japan Times. He was one of the most respected figures in the Japanese business world, and his book, The Path, is usually considered as mandatory reading for Japanese entrepreneurs. According to Panasonic, the number of people that Matsushita personally trained at the company has decreased, making an AI version necessary. We believe, quote, we believe it is important for our employees to understand our founder, Konosuke Matsushita's leadership philosophy, on which our basic management policy is based, and to pass it on through generations. Panasonic has said this in a statement. They reportedly collaborated with Tokyo University's Matsuo Institute to develop the AI Matsushita, which will be trained on 3,000 recordings of him, as well as his writings, lectures, and digitized interviews. The plan is to do the same with his direct contacts and researchers, so they can help users make management decisions based on what the founder might have thought or felt about a situation. All right. There's a lot to unpack here, Lindsay. We did have a guest on the show once that did talk about using AI to keep people like terminally ill people. So as they pass on, you can then go visit the dead person, the AI version of that, from a personal basis. And there's a whole lot of ethical and moral considerations that you have there. But I wanted, but now this is the first time I've heard about it from a business leadership standpoint. And the Japanese culture also is a little bit different from the U.S. But I'm wondering if this takes off, what is preventing Apple, for example, to bring back Steve Jobs as a Steve Jobs AI based on all of his recordings and thoughts and leadership things? And are we going to start seeing AI leaders from a lot of these founders for these companies, or is this just a one-off, you think?
It's funny, when I was reading this, do you watch Black Mirror at all?
I really need to, because was this an episode of Black Mirror? I really needed to spend some time this weekend.
There was something similar to it. Yeah, one of the episodes, it wasn't the exact same thing, but it was similar, where I was like, this literally could be a Black Mirror episode. Yeah. But I understand the intention of bringing back, like, almost to memorialize, like in this case, like a leader to be like, this is what our company stands for. This is the culture. Like, this is, this is what we represent. What concerns me is if, they mention for training or for trying to lead employees. Like, I don't know if we want to base future company decisions on an AI of someone that doesn't actually exist anymore. That's a little concerning, but I see no issue being I don't know, some sort of weird memorial type AI functionality. That seems better to me.
All right. Well, if you were, what companies do you think that this might work for in the U.S.? Do you think so you don't think that a virtual Steve, and Chris, I think you wanted to say something too. You probably disagree with this too.
No, I mean, I agree. I agree with Lindsay on this.
Okay.
I don't think it should be used as a replacement for an actual physical CEO.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I think maybe in the training purposes, like if you are like, hey, welcome to Company X, and here's our original founder. Yes, he did pass on, but here's our original founder and some of his philosophies, and then ask him a question and see what they. But I don't think, obviously they're not putting this guy in charge of anything. But I mean, I don't know. So Steve Jobs is one of them that I was thinking about. The other one I was thinking about was Walt Disney. Like, imagine, you've seen, if you've gone to Disney, obviously they have, recordings and films of him, and he probably had a lot of recordings of him talking about his corporate philosophy or his, thoughts. I could see Disney completely doing this as part of their training for new Disney employees, whether it's at the parks or, but again, that company's now so huge. So half the time, I don't think a lot of the company people that work at Disney understand that Disney philosophy. Or does it then become cult-like? And then maybe you don't want that because then, like a company as a cult is probably a bad idea.
No, I think it's fine, like, to be used in a exhibition way like that, like for, HR employee training. That's fine. I mean, it'd be kind of cool, but I think it should just stay at that. It shouldn't go beyond that.
Yeah, like our own founder, Pat McGovern at IDG. He passed away about, was it 8 or 9 years ago? It might be cool to have like a Pat McGovern AI just to talk to. Or just, to remind everybody what his philosophy was. But yeah, I mean, this could veer down a really bad and dark path. And I guess I need to watch more Black Mirror, Lindsay.
It'll remind us of the good days.
Yeah, again, that goes down another different path too. I mean, what is?
I feel like, yeah. Sorry.
No,
I was just going to say, I feel like if the leader was strong enough and if they did like embody a culture, I do. That's why, I think that you're right. Like, I feel like this is a good reason to kind of bring them back in AI form, and point to them as being, hey, this is what our company represents. Like, if they were a strong enough leader, for sure.
Can you think of any other companies that it might work here in the U.S. or?
I mean, it'd be
the
for
two that you mentioned were perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, any company that wants to do it, It's really up to...
I was thinking of like General Motors. You could bring back Lee Iacocca. That was a really old reference. At least that guy was around in the 80s. Thomas Edison for General Electric. I don't know if he started GE, but Jack Welch, another business leader that was. But again, a lot of these business leaders were then villainized after they left or after they died too.
Let's forget the CEOs. Let's bring back Chris Farley, like the good comedians. Come on, let's.
We all know how good AI is at humor. Like, I'm not sure if you could do that.
Well, on the subject of bringing back dead people,
So you'd rather go the entertainment route rather than the business leader route?
I'm not super serious about it, but it would be cool to see. It would be cool.
I will say on the entertainment note, I was remembering, I forget, it was a few years ago, but someone brought Michael Jackson back in like hologram form, and had him dance. I think it might have been like Justin Timberlake, but they were like dancing on stage with this hologram.
Yeah. Yeah.
Michael Jackson. So
and there have
that's kind of where my mind went to.
Yeah, there have been some reports of this in the entertainment space where they've taken recordings and they have AI voices for someone. I know Judy Garland. I think Burt Reynolds is one that they've done this with. This is 11 Labs, which is the big leader in the voice AI space, and they read books in the voice of that person. But it's not interactive when so that I could ask. Virtual or AI avatar Burt Reynolds, advice on acting or anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that at some point.
I mean, they've already had...
it's less emotional than bringing back your dead grandparents.
Yeah, I mean, they've already had concerts, like AI concerts.
Yeah.
What's this one?
Tupac?
Kiss.
Oh, well, Kiss is doing... They're all alive still.
I know, and they're doing this digital, They're not actually, they're not physically there.
Yeah.
But they're doing this kind of like, they had themselves, 3D rendered, right? And then they basically just sell concerts of their, CGI avatar, basically, and they just play all the music. And it's like, well, why can't you just do it in person? Like, why would you want to pay a ticket for that?
Well, because they're old. They're in their 70s
I get
now,
that. Hey, look at Mike Tyson. Come on. No, I'm kidding. But it's like, man, I don't like. I wouldn't want to pay a ticket for that.
Well,
they're just going to be digital avatars and just recordings of their music?
Would you be surprised if 20 to 30 years from now that Taylor Swift is doing an AI avatar concert somewhere? That won't surprise me.
No, not at all. That won't surprise me.
Yeah.
Swifties will buy anything to get a little bit of Taylor Swift. They'll do anything. But,
probably couldn't get tickets for that, honestly, through Ticketmaster.
I just feel bad for the people at Facebook because I know Mark Zuckerberg will probably jump at the chance at some point to have a AI avatar Zuckerberg after he's gone. Anyway, all right. I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Lindsay, thank you so much for being on the show with us, and we will see you in one more week, and then we're going to be off for the holidays. So, again, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Always good to see you too, Chris. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.